Are you ready for some changes? Well, ready or not, here they come because the planet of transformation, big change, death and rebirth itself is coming to Aquarius this Thursday, January the 20th. It's going to stay most of the year here in 2024. It'll dance back to Capricorn for a minute for a few weeks before it changes signs one final time and stays in Aquarius all the way until 2043. Oh my goodness, are we ready for the background frequency of our lives to change in ways that none of us has experienced? I am. I'm ready for it. I'm over Pluto and Capricorn. But anyway, this is Nikki from Illuminated Movement Astrology, and you guessed it, I'm here to talk today about Pluto moving into Aquarius. So as with all my videos, I try to give more of the bigger picture, a very Aquarian thing, the context behind what we're talking about, because astrology is complicated. There's a lot that's going on. And so in this era of wanting to reduce things down, right, to a soundbite or a snazzy headline, it's great, but it really, really does not give you understanding of what actually is coming up. And Pluto is a huge planet. He takes anywhere from 11 and a half years to over 30 years to change signs. So it's a big deal. It really, really transforms our collective unconscious as a whole, in addition to what it does in our own personal charts. So I'm going to talk today mostly from an evolutionary astrology standpoint. That's the basis of my astrological work, is evolutionary work. And then I also do humanistic work. So what does that mean? It means that we'll be talking about Pluto from the perspective of your soul's evolution and growth. Okay, so I'm not really going to be talking about like world events. That would be more mundane astrology. So if that's what you're looking for, not the video for you. And my overall goal is to give you an idea and an understanding of the energetic frequencies that will be affecting your life so that you can participate in the changes. Because one of the things that I find that can be a little bit difficult with astrology is we know something's coming up and we start anticipating it, right? We start sometimes getting anxious for it, like, oh my gosh, especially when it comes to Pluto, the planet, right? Like I said, of big changes, transformation, death and rebirth. It's like, oh no, what's Pluto going to bring me? And so there can be kind of this low level anxiety that keeps us from really fully engaging with the gifts that Pluto can bring. And this is true for any transit too. I mean, it could be, talking about a good transit, and that's why I don't really do a lot of predictive astrology either, is I feel like it robs people of self-agency in some way, right? If someone told you on, I don't know, July 26th, you're going to win the lottery. Well, maybe you have to do all kinds of other things to get to that point where you can win the lottery, right? It's not just about something's going to drop out of the sky. It's our action, the actions that we take and the way that we participate in life that makes all the difference. So that's my goal here today with this video. So I'm going to talk about Pluto. I'm going to talk about Aquarius. I'm going to talk about some of the other shifts that are happening that I really haven't heard a lot of people mention that are humongous. They're huge. So hopefully you'll get a nice understanding and won't feel afraid of this transit. Will feel maybe more excited, or at least ready to engage with what comes your way. Okay, so Pluto in Aquarius, active from 2023 all the way till 2043. Now, last year, Pluto was in Aquarius from the end of March through about the beginning of June. So it was really only there for like 3.5 months. But that gave us a little bit of a preview of the energy we can come to expect from Pluto moving into the sign of Aquarius, from it being in that sign. So think back to that time and think back about what came up for you. What did you notice in the collective? How did you feel with the shift in dynamics? For some people, it would be a welcome relief. That would probably be my Cancer friends who have had Pluto opposing them for quite a long time. And that's not an easy thing to happen. For others of you, it may have felt like a big shock. Some of you may be excited about it. So it's going to be different for everyone. But let's dive into some more things we can expect from this tiny but mighty planet. All right. So pause for the cause. Here are some astrology basics for people who are new or those who are getting more familiar. The planet, it's actually the most important part, right? It's the action and it's the what is happening. The sign is secondary. Okay. Contrary to popular like sun sign astrology, right? That makes us think the signs are the most important thing. It's actually the planet. The sign talks about how the action is perceived, or in other words, the lens through which the planet sees. The houses in astrology are about where the action is taking place. So different slices of the astrological pie deal with different things. It could be dealing with your home, for example. It could be dealing with your partnerships, for another example, or your friend groups, things like that. So that will tell you where this action is taking place. And aspects are the conversation between different planets on the chart. So, for example, if you were born just around the full moon, you're going to have your sun and your moon in opposite places in the chart. Okay. And that kind of aspect has its own energy versus if your sun and moon are right next to each other in the chart. Okay. That would be a new moon. So, they have different connotations. Astrology is complex. As I mentioned at the beginning, there are many, many layers to astrology and so many things that are simultaneously occurring, which shift how we activate, how we participate, how we integrate the energy that is happening. And it can be very, very different from historical perspectives. So, for example, the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, which a lot of people are talking about, was just after the Revolutionary Wars in America and France, right? But there's some background frequencies, there's some big differences in the outer planets that will not make this Pluto in Aquarius like that Pluto in Aquarius. Huge one here. Astrology does not make anything happen to you. You just say it even louder for people in the back, right? It is not going to make things happen to you. Pluto is not going to bring you troubles, okay? Mars is not going to bring an argument into your life, okay? Those things can happen, they're possibilities, but really you're a co-creator with the energies of life, okay? So don't let anything, astrology included, strip you of your self-agency, because that's going to be a big theme coming up over the next few years. And finally, fate is what you were born to experience, and destiny is what you do with it. So, for example, right? Pluto being in Aquarius right now, you signed up to be alive during that transit. Okay, and where it occurs for you on your chart and whatever planets it's talking to or not talking to, that's part of fate. Okay, those were things that were going to happen when you chose to incarnate in this life. However, what you do with those transits, how you choose to interact or not, right, resist or go with these energies, that's entirely up to you. Okay, so again, you are the co-creator of your life. Nothing is being done to you. Pluto. So, the planet of transformation and hidden riches. Okay, Pluto is not all bad things. I've talked to Pluto about Pluto a lot on this channel. And Pluto does not always bring you troubles, okay? Pluto was also the god of buried treasure, right? If any of you have ever gone digging for gold, you know you got to dig quite a way most of the time to get to it, right? It doesn't typically just lay around in slabs on the top of the earth. You got to do some work to find it. And Pluto's the same way. So he will reveal hidden riches if we are brave enough, if we choose to work with him. And again, this is going to be changing our collective frequency from 2023 to 2043. So, from the evolutionary astrology perspective, Pluto is your growth. Okay, it's your transformation on a soul level. So, wherever Pluto starts in your natal chart, you and your soul group that you incarnated with chose to be born with that energetic signature of what you wanted to transform and how. Okay. And then as you move through life, Pluto is going to move also. It's going to move into different signs and different houses and make different conversations, different aspects, depending on where it is. And all of those things contribute to your dynamic change. Okay. Pluto is also representative of the collective unconscious. Okay. And the need for change. So, for example, we've had Pluto in Capricorn since 2008. When you think about Pluto and Capricorn on a societal level, what has been changing? What has been coming up for examination? Right? Pluto will reveal what needs to be changed, often by showing you what's stagnant or what's rotting, like a rotting foundation, or a place where you're experiencing power struggles or some kind of betrayal or things like that. It's showing you that for a reason because the energies need to change. Okay. So that's one of the ways that Pluto helps you. Again, it all depends on how you look at it. So, as I already said, it reveals stagnation. It takes us from disempowerment to empowerment. And that's a big one, right? When I just mentioned power struggles and betrayal and things like that, when you get some of the non-negotiable sides of Pluto, it can really kick you down, right? It can really feel icky and like, what is going on? But what it's actually asking you to do is take a look at where you're, in a sense, giving your power away, where there are stuck beliefs or stuck patterns of behavior, whether it came from generational signatures, whether it came from past lives. Is that something that, resonates for you? Whatever it is, it's bringing them up to show you that it needs to change. And once you engage with it, once you uncover whatever it is that was creating that mirror image of disempowerment, then empowerment can really be possible. And that's a pretty awesome journey if you've been on it. And Pluto, of course, will reveal the gold to you after you have been digging deep for it. Pluto does make you work for transformation. It's like Saturn in that way. It's not just going to, even the easier Pluto changes, they really come about as a result of your hard work and your dedication to them. Okay. And so, how does Pluto elicit transformation? Everyone's favorite: disruptive changes, crisis, non-negotiable events. Okay. These things, they shock you. Okay. And the purpose of a huge shock is to catapult you into an evolutionary leap. Okay. It's a big one. These things could be, in a sense, like losing a job, for example, like maybe the company that you built has to shut down for whatever reason. And that's a really difficult thing for you. It wasn't something that you wanted to have happen. Maybe that's something. For other people, it can be the loss of something or someone, like the loss of a relationship or the loss of a loved one. Those things you can't negotiate, right? They are what they are. It could be a health issue. It could be an accident of some kind that for a period of time leaves you incapacitated and forces you back in on yourself and changes your life, in a permanent way. So those things are the most difficult, right, of the Pluto changes. And for the people that do experience those, for whatever reason, your soul decided that you needed a really big wake-up call. You needed to do kind of a lot in a short amount of time. Okay, maybe something that would take other souls decades of lifetimes, many, many, many lifetimes to accomplish, you're kind of being asked to do quickly in one lifetime. And so those things are big, right? But they don't have to be horrible. Think about someone or maybe a story that you've heard of someone else, something that was unwanted that happened to them that turned around and was the best thing that ever happened to them, right? It changes their life for the better. Now, it does not make the original event any less painful, but there is something on the other side. So if you do experience that or have experienced it, right, just know there's something on the other side of it for you that will be a beautiful thing. Another way that Pluto can help us to transform is forming a relationship to something that we need. So what do I mean by that? So in some sense, all of us are looking to grow, right? We're looking to change. We're looking to evolve. And to do that, that requires us to merge with someone or something else, which is kind of, if you think about it, like scorpionic energy, eighth house kind of energy. It says, I have something that I want to accomplish that I don't yet have the tools for. And so that'll help you connect with something that you want to accomplish. And the example that I put down here was, learning about nutrition and fitness, right? If you've had a period of feeling unhealthy for whatever reason, maybe it was partially the thing above, maybe there was some kind of health crisis that happened and you're like, wow, I really need to change my ways or things are going to go really bad for me. Or maybe it's just for whatever reason didn't have access to that, or you came from a family where that was not the value and you decide, I really want to feel strong and I really want to feel powerful and healthy. I want to feel vital and alive, and I really don't want to eat fast food for every meal, and I really don't want to just sit around all day and scroll on social media or whatever. So you will form a relationship with other people or with other things that you seek out to help you grow and change and achieve your goal of becoming healthy. Another way that Pluto helps us change is a situation could occur where we become aware of stagnation. So the example I gave was leaving a long, unfulfilling career, right? And then finding your passion. We hear about that happening a lot, right? Especially lately. That's kind of been a big one with the Pluto and Capricorn and all the things that happened in 2020 with businesses shutting down. And of course, that's a very complex and nuanced discussion in and of itself that I won't go into here because I don't have the time and it's not quite the place. But let's say you're working a job and you're doing it because it's a paycheck, or you're doing it because, it's a familial expectation. Like everyone in your family is a doctor or a lawyer. And so that's what you're supposed to do, right? But you really feel exhausted on the inside. You're doing it, you're going through the motions, but you kind of feel a little bit dead inside, right? Well, you can get to a point where you're like, you know what, enough's enough. I'm not growing, I'm not changing. I've gone as far as I can go. And I either put the pedal to the metal and I figure out how to do something that I really want to do. Like I really want to make cupcakes. I really just want to be the best cupcake chef ever. And that's all I want to do in my spare time. So you start doing that, right? And you start dedicating that energy to changing your situation. And then you get a great outcome at the end. And the last way that Pluto brings about transformation for us is when a situation arises where you become aware of latent, meaning things that haven't like woken up yet, haven't come to the surface yet, latent talents, capacities, or capabilities. So this is another one that depends on the situation, but it's a little bit easier to deal with most of the time than like a disruptive change, that crisis moment, although the two can be related. So maybe there's something that comes up in your life where you have to step up and take a leadership role, right? Maybe you've been working on planning an event for a really, really long time and it's the day and it's showtime, it's ready to go, and the event coordinator or director who's supposed to be running the show can't come. So you pick up the baton and you end up taking the reins and coordinating the whole event, and it's a great success and everything works out great. And you realize, oh, wow, I'm actually a really capable leader. I think I should do more of this, right? That could be one example. Another example, it's a little bit, more somber, but it could be something like you need to take care of a family member, right? Like perhaps, it's a sibling who passes away and they have children, and now the children become your kids to take care of. You have to stand in and be the parent now for some reason. That could be a situation, again, a non-negotiable event, a crisis event that pushes you into a situation where you have to pull out all your parental capabilities, right? And, as I've kind of alluded to this whole time, it can be a combination of any of these things or things that happen simultaneously. Because remember, Pluto does take a long time to move. So we're talking about like 19 and a half years here. So just to give you a little idea of how long that could be. We can't talk about Aquarius without talking about Leo. And that's not because Leo has to be the center of everything, although no offense, Leos, they would like to be. Leo and Aquarius is an axis. So When Pluto is transiting Aquarius, it's going to activate the opposite sign. All right, the entire zodiac is really made out of 6 pairs of signs. And those 6 pairs of signs work together on an axis, right, which is a particular theme. One end of the axis will be subjective, it will be personal, and the other will be objective and what we call transpersonal or universal, meaning, outside the self. And so an easy way to kind of remember this is the first 6 signs are personal, and the next 6 signs are objective, they're universal. Okay. So when we're talking about Leo, we're talking about, again, the self, right? Leo is ruled by the sun. The sun is the center of our universe. And so Leo, amongst a lot of things, is where we creatively self-actualize, right? It's where we go, I am an individual self. And I've got my own style, my own personality, and my own ways of doing things. And I'm going to go forward with who I really am. And I'm going to shine as who I really am. And that's a really great aspect of Leo. Leo's also at its best, it's generous, right? So Leo, when they're really in their harmony, are very, very giving, right? They're very generous. If you think about the sun shines every day, right? It just comes around and shines, and it helps plants grow, and it warms our earth, and it does all kinds of other things. And so when Leo is being its best, Leo is the same way. It's not trying to take the spotlight or only give you a little bit of whatever they think, right? It just shares. And it recognizes the light in other people as well. So they help people, they praise other people, they're secure in themselves, they know who they are. And so they're not threatened by other people, right? They're playful and they've got these big, warm hearts. And that's what makes Leo a great leader. As we talk about Leo, and Leo has been associated with kings and queens, right? And I realize that can be kind of an outdated thing at this point in history. But if you think about, a leadership role, what kind of leader do you want to be? Or what kind of leadership would you like to have? Right? Someone who's loving and supportive and feels good about themselves and doesn't, scream at people or threaten them or isn't dramatic and problem causing, right? That stuff sucks. It's terrible, right? And we all have the capacity to do that. We all have Leo somewhere. So looking at the other side, Aquarius. Aquarius is where we connect with the collective. Aquarius takes what Leo built, that creative self-actualization, and shares it with other people. It finds a place in the group for its unique self, right? And that's what leads Aquarius to be radically authentic. And that's part of what helps Aquarius to be concerned about the group, right? About the collective, because they understand that the relationship between the individual and the collective is really, really important. Of course, that's when Aquarius is at its best. So another piece that Aquarius is great with is objectivity, is being able to stand back and look at the bigger picture, look at the big view. Leo is very focused, right? It's very like singularly focused, typically on the self. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? Aquarius takes that and it widens it out and says, oh, there's all these others, other points of view, other people, other ways of doing things. And that's part of what leads Aquarius to be innovative. It says there's a better way to do this, right? Takes what Capricorn builds, often tumbles it, kind of breaks it apart. And that can be a little bit challenging depending on what we're talking about, but says there's another way. There's a better way. Let's innovate this. Let's change this, right? Because Aquarius is very visionary. And to do that, to make a big change and to go against a societal structure, something that's been in place for a long time, Capricorn, takes courage, right? So Aquarius is also the courage to stand apart. And Aquarius, when they're doing great, kind of in this sense, shares this with Leo, recognizes that everyone is unique and that that is valuable and that everyone has their place and that that is valuable. Okay, so the balance between Leo and Aquarius when they're functioning optimally is the balance between the heart and the head, right? Between the self and others, between being creatively self-actualized and keeping it and holding it and sharing it, right? And Leo and Aquarius, I didn't write this on here, but they have a lot to do with audience and groups as well. So audience, what do I mean by audience? It's the people that you're around, right? Because Aquarius is also associated with genius. And the funny thing about genius is it depends on, again, the audience. What is genius to some people will be madness to others, right? And I think we probably, most of us have experienced that in some way of that being outside the group, right? And people look at you like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with you, right? That's not your group, okay? That's not your audience. And the people who get you, the people who celebrate you, they'll look at you and your uniqueness, your weirdness, your quirks, whatever it is, because all those things are associated with Aquarius also, and they recognize it as genius. They see it as valuable. They get you. Those are your people, right? And Leo is similar, Leo likes attention, right? I don't think I'm saying anything too revolutionary there. Leo likes attention. The problem is when Leo realizes that they're not quite secure in themselves. And so they have to always get attention from others, right? They're always doing things to show off or be dramatic or be revered in some way, to have people show loyalty to them in some way, to clap for them, right? And they get into that overly dramatic, overly attention seeking space that Leo can get into. Again, that also has to do with being around the right people and also being secure in yourself, which those two things, they do sometimes go hand in hand, or they at least can enhance one another. So Leo having the security to be like, oh, nobody's clapping for me. Well, that's okay. I'll go where they do, or I'll perform anyway, right? That's part of that Leo Aquarius axis. So when those two things are working together, when they're coherent, we have harmony. So, what happens when Leo and Aquarius are not harmonious? Well, here's the deal. Pluto is going to activate, as I said, both sides of this axis. But what it's going to do is it's going to show us where there's disharmony because it's going to reveal extremes. So, what are some of the extremes, like the not so great sides of Leo and Aquarius? Well, as I've been talking about, Leo demands attention from others, right? Very demanding. They can be bullies, right? Because they're insecure. They can be superficial. They can take credit for other people's work, which is not great. Deny other people their time in the spotlight, which kind of goes hand in hand with taking credit for other people's work. Again, it has to do with insecurity. Afraid there won't be enough applause for them. They can be cruel leaders, right? We can have absolutism here. Back when we had more monarchies, I realized there's still quite a few left in the world, but think about, cruel kings and queens. And again, this has to do with leadership as well. The tyranny that is possible with Leo is pretty nasty. And it actually goes also to the other side with Aquarius. So those two can be very tyrannical. Not great. Aquarius. Ooh, the yucky part here can be superiority. Okay. They're better than everyone. They know better than everyone. They don't need to learn about other people or relate with other people, the plebes, right, that are below, right? It's also why Aquarius has to do with elitism. And that is not great because Aquarius has so much to give and to share, but when they pull back from people, right, or they stagnate themselves, it cuts them off from others. And so that's part of what can lead to being cold-hearted, right? It can partly be a contributing factor in being a rebel without a cause and just coming in and causing chaos and spite, right? Causing disruption, coming in. That's a very kind of Uranian function. It's a very shadow side of Saturn function, is coming in and just disrupting just because, right? That's not a great thing to do to other people. One of the other pieces is conformity. So as much as Aquarius, we can think of Aquarius as being very individualistic, very authentic, very quirky, very real, very themselves. When they're not standing in harmony with that, they can be massively conformist. And conformist either in they don't want to stand out, they want to just sink back into the group and do whatever the group does, kind of that mob mentality dynamic. Um, or they don't want other people to stand out, right? Again, in that kind of tyrannical way. And that can lead to a lot of dystopia as well, because if you can't be special, right, nothing can stand out. There can be no joy, inner child, playfulness, right? The other side, which would be Leo. Ooh, that's not very fun. And one of the last things with Aquarius here is because they can be objective, because they can stand back, sometimes they can stand too far back to the point where they lose their heart, they lose connection to others. And that can lead to a number of things. Again, it could be tyrannical, it could be just this cold-heartedness where they just don't care about others. Or it can also lead, in a sense, to some nihilism, right? Which can lead to some depression as well and that could be for other reasons. That could also be, having this grand vision, really wanting things to be harmonious and kind of almost having like a utopian sense, and then realizing once you step back and look far enough back that that's goal is so lofty, it's almost impossible to achieve, and that can create some depression as well. So, or at least disheartenment. So those things are a little bit challenging there. And again, Pluto's going to bring these things up. Okay. And it kind of already is. We can already see that in the world a little bit, right? On the world stage of people pushing for others to think like them, right? The people who are standing out and being the rebels and thinking for themselves, right? They're getting a lot of pushback. They're getting a lot of pushback from the establishment. And this includes people who were once on the other side. And I'll have to do a deeper dive into Aquarius because there's so much I can say to Aquarius. It's actually a really complicated sign. But, you know, one of those functions of the Saturn side of Aquarius is, again, crystallization. And so what was once revolutionary or rebellious or whatever, it eventually becomes mainstream, right? And that can be through sheer force, or that can be just part of the rhythm of the zodiac, rhythm of life, that things are creative, unique, eccentric, crazy, and then they get, accepted, and then it goes back around. Now we got to find the next thing, right? So it doesn't have to be terrible, but it could be. So Aquarius itself, I love this image of this little girl on a swing, swinging high above the clouds and getting that viewpoint, right? Because Aquarius, as I said before, is the visionary. It's a fixed air sign. It's the apex of winter in the northern hemisphere. And its domain, its home base, is the 11th house. And as I was mentioning earlier, the planets that are associated with Uranus or associated with Aquarius, excuse me, are Uranus and Saturn, two very, very, very contrastingly different planets. Uranus came to be associated with Aquarius because it was discovered officially, although it probably was discovered prior, but officially just after the Revolutionary Wars. And so it came to be associated with Aquarius, with rebellion, with radical change in humanity due to Pluto being in Aquarius at the time of discovery. So we also didn't know about Pluto at that point, so I probably should have said that, but oh well, you can handle it. Anyway, Aquarius associated with radical authenticity and individuation, right? Becoming the unique self, becoming your authentic self. Big picture and outsider perspective. So whatever is outside of what you grew up with, what is considered normal, what is accepted, it's anything outside of that, or even in a sense, like the way it's always been, right? At some point, someone decided to sell pre-sliced bread, and that was innovative, right? Which brings me to innovation. Sometimes you just build a better mousetrap, as they like to say on Shark Tank. This can also be inventions. It has to do with technology, of course, and astrology, that big picture humanitarian overview and connection to the cosmos. Aquarius is interested in humanitarian movements, collective ideals, and reforms. It has to do with groups and clubs and tribes, audience, and associations, which I talked about when we talked about Leo and Aquarius, or it's the rejection of those things, right? Aquarius can also choose to not engage with society, not be part of a club, not be part of a tribe, right? Even though they would also kind of ironically be in the outsiders club. So you kind of always end up in a club, don't you? It has to do with genius and eccentricity and rebellion. Hopefully, a rebel with a cause, although it could be without. Aquarius is generally associated with underdogs or those which are different from the norm. And again, that depends on your background, your environment, your culture, what is normal to you. Right? If you grew up in Siberia, it would be very different, very strange, very weird, right? To go down to like the Bahamas. Very different environment. Things that are done there would be really different. Okay. So it could be something as simple as that. It can also be people who are in some way disenfranchised, in the minority, or on the outside of whatever is considered normal or acceptable. And again, that's subjective. That has to do with perspectives, just like Aquarius. And then lastly, Aquarius has to do with acceleration and a changed perception of time. So Aquarius, past Capricorn, traditionally ruled by Saturn, modern ruled Uranus. So when Uranus was discovered, it went beyond space-time boundary, which is represented by Saturn. And it changed the way that we look at the universe, ourselves, the way in which we interact with things. And again, it does have a speeding upness to it and an acceleration, a wanting things to be ideal, like now, wanting things to be changed now, not waiting for it, not a slow burn, not like Capricorn, right? Capricorn was like, well, we can take a really long time. Aquarius wants it now. So if you hadn't noticed, there's been an acceleration of time. Does it feel like time is speeding up? Yeah, right. There's a lot of changes around how we are perceiving time. And that partially has to do with all this Aquarian energy. So, as I was talking about Pluto in Aquarius in the age of air. So, this is not the same as the age of Aquarius. That's a little bit different topic, which I won't talk about here or cover here because it's just way too much information. But talking about ages, so there's a thing with astrological ages that give us more information about the collective background frequency, about our social frequency in particular. And that has to do with Jupiter and Saturn. They have a cycle where they dance together in the sky, and it's beautiful and it's amazing. You guys should look it up because I don't know how to do those things to like make it all like animated and show you the dance, but it's really beautiful. And what they do is they meet up together conjunct, right? That's peanut butter and jelly, that's side by side, every about 200 years in an element. The elements, for those who need a review, are fire, earth, air, and water. Okay. And as they move through the element for 200 years, they meet up every 20 years in a new sign of that same element. Okay. So, for example, we're in the age of air. So, in 1980, 1981, Jupiter and Saturn met up in Libra, right? In 2020, Jupiter and Saturn met up in Aquarius. Next, they're going to meet in Gemini and so on and so forth. So they're going to go around in that way. So they're not going to meet, for example, in Aries and then meet in Gemini and then meet in Taurus and then meet in Scorpio. Like it doesn't work that way. Okay, that's not how they work. So they go through the elements, and that elemental background frequency has a lot to do with these 200-year chunks. And if you know history, you look at history, you might go, oh my gosh, yeah, that's actually true. And then they have these smaller chunks of about every 20 years. And if we've noticed, there's a big shift about every 20-ish years. And part of that has to do with Jupiter and Saturn. Some of it has to do with Pluto, some of it has to do with Uranus, but for the purposes of this, we're talking about Jupiter and Saturn. So why does this matter? Hopefully you can see most of that over on the right. Well, it changes our societal values and our focus. Okay, so we just left an age of Earth. We had Jupiter and Saturn meeting in Virgo, 5 degrees, 7 minutes Virgo in 1802. And they did a little dance back to fire, because it goes in order: fire, earth, air, water. Prior to that, okay, so the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was an age of fire. Very different from where we are now. But at any rate, we had 200 years of the background frequency being Earth oriented. And what did we see in that time from the early 1800s? We saw huge changes in industry, right? In textiles, factories, machinery, like that changed things, both for good and not good, but changed them tremendously. There was the invention of the work week, right? Downton Abbey is one of my favorite shows. I just love it. And there was a joke in there where Maggie Smith's character is just appalled at what's a weekend. Like she has no idea what a weekend is, right? Because she's from the aristocracy and that's not a thing yet. But for the working class people, a weekend, having a couple days off, was a big deal. That was a huge change. So things that we take for granted, right? And of course, there were huge changes in the labor force in general. And you guys can look that up historically. Roads and cars and airplanes and shipping and all these things changed tremendously, which of course also led to big business, and it led to eventually corporations, the expansion of cities, and then eventually suburbs, and on we went, right? Big changes in banks, changes in money. We had the advent of credit cards and things like that, which we hadn't had before. And there was an emphasis in general on materialism. And so materialism, the earth signs have to do with tangible things. They have to do with food. They have to do with money. They have to do with structures. They have to do with bodies, things like that. So that's what we mean by materialism. As you can see over here on the right side, this is from Astro, which I love Astro. It's such an amazing resource and website for all kinds of different things you can look up on there. It's fantastic. I use it all the time. We can see that we had all this Earth, right? Earth, 1961. Those of us who were born 1980 to 81, there was about a 6-month period where we can see Jupiter and Saturn met up in Libra. So for the people who were born in that small chunk of time, our soul group that came in, because I'm one of those little babies that came in, we were in some ways ahead of our time. It was like a preview energy of what was to come. And so I'd be interested to hear, let me know in the comments below, if you were born in this time, did you feel out of sync with society? Because I know I sure did. And I've talked to a few other people that were born with that Jupiter, Saturn, and Libra conjunction specifically. And of course, Jupiter and Libra did conjunct in other signs, but we're talking about that shift, that one little chunk of like 6 months that was the anomaly in 200 years. Did you feel out of sync with the kind of like the social frequency around you? And do you feel a little bit better now? So let me know below. Really interested in what other people from that era have to say about it. Because the official end of the age of Earth, moving into the age of, air, it started in 1980. So we can see that as the preview, but we still had a lot of that Earth, that materialism in the background, right, up until 2020. When we had Jupiter and Saturn, if you remember, astrologers were making a big deal out of it back then. They met at 0 degrees, 29 minutes, which 0 is the beginning of the sign. So it really began a new cycle in Aquarius. So not only do we have Pluto moving into Aquarius, right, the planet of transformation and change, but we also have, since 2020, Jupiter and Saturn doing a 20-year cycle of societal changes in Aquarius. Told you this would make sense. So hopefully that makes sense, right? So can you see there's almost a double dose of Aquarian energy? And there's that leaving behind of Earth frequency. So kind of an easier example, people not wanting to clock in at work, right? They're not buying into the corporate dream slash nightmare. They're over it. They want freedom. They want to work on flexible schedules. They want to travel and work, right? So that's one way that this energy is coming up. We were talking a lot about inclusion of peoples who have not been represented, right? That has been huge, particularly in the last 3 years, 4 years, and will continue to be so for quite some time. Looking at technology, that's another big one. I mean, I'm talking to you guys through the computer and doing this whole thing, which is basically like a teachable moment through the computer. That's a big change rather than, in person, body to body, right? So that's big. And what can we expect for the age of air? Well, it's going to put an emphasis on our society valuing things like ideas, information. Right? Information is really kind of the new currency in a lot of ways. Technology, of course, curiosity, right? Being curious about things. That's what leads to changes and innovations and sharing and wanting to know about other cultures and other places. Relating, relationships, and social interaction. This will also be a big one. And so part of what we've seen, and again, this is another probably separate conversation, but we saw Saturn creates distance. Saturn says no. Saturn separates things. And so when we saw social distancing, that was partly that Saturn function, and that has had a hugely negative impact on our society. Huge. Children don't understand facial cues and recognition. Speech has been diminished. People interacting with each other has gotten kind of weird, right? So there's a lot of, even though I put, relating relationships and social interaction, you might be like, Nicole, what the heck are you talking about? Like, we've never been more disconnected. That's also a symptom, again, of that shadow side of Aquarius, not relating, not being part of the group, not being able to connect to the heart. And so that's why it'll be really, really important to make sure that we don't lose our connection to our heart, to each other, to interacting and learning about one another, being curious about other people instead of taking on that shadow Aquarian, well, I know better, or I'm better, or I'm superior. You're not, because you're from a different country or place or race or creed or whatever the heck, box they're checking nowadays. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So that's part of it, right? The balanced side of Aquarius is recognizing that everyone contributes and that everyone is important, not just some, right? So anyway, off my soapbox. Back to the age of air, travel, migration, and trade. So that will also be big. And again, it could come up either way because we've got Pluto coming in here. There may be some really big changes to, are we able to travel or not? Maybe travel will be very emphasized for you. Maybe that will be the thing that leads to your transformation, right? Interacting with another place or culture or something like that. We are already seeing huge, huge, huge migrations happening and a lot of trade, a lot of sharing, right? Spreading, scattering. If we think about what does air do in the natural world, right? It carries things. It carries seeds, for example, to other places. Birds use it for flight. So it's a really important function, but it's not like Earth. Earth is solid, right? Air, you can't even see air. You only see air's effects, right? And as I mentioned, air scatters. So, there's a little bit of kind of wanting to be a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here and a little bit there. We lack in some ways the solidarity of Earth, that clocking in, clocking out, the knowing what to expect, the kind of yeah, a little bit of routine, right? Some of that kind of certainty of one foot in front of the other. Air is kind of all over, right? And you might like that, you might not. Again, everything has got its great points and its challenges. And then communication. Communication is huge. So the emphasis has moved from materialism to connectivity, right? In whatever way that takes form. So that's a really, really big change. And that, if you can see on this graph over to the right, that is going to happen all the way until 2159. Such a weird number. I will not be here, most likely. But then we'll have that preview energy of the society kind of dipping their toes into water energy, which will shift in the year 2200. So if you feel like stuff is crazy and you feel like you can't keep a schedule and you feel like everything's up in the air, well, now you know why. So what can we expect from Pluto in Aquarius? So put together all the things that I just talked about, right? And then look at your personal chart. So you want to look at your luminaries, which are the sun and the moon. Okay, any personal planets that you have or angles that you have, which are the ascendant, the descendant, the midheaven, and the IC, the Imam Cheli. Those are like, if you're unfamiliar, it's like a compass. It's kind of like north, south, east, west on your chart. Okay, anything in Aquarius. Now, if you notice, I left out the other planets, the social planets and the outer planets, because they do have a big impact, but what's going to affect you on a day-to-day basis most likely is going to be the personal planets in your sun or moon if you have anything in Aquarius. The other thing you want to check out are any personal planets or angles in the fixed signs. Okay, that would be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Why? Because they're going to form challenging aspects. They're going to form the squares. They're going to form the oppositions. Squares is about a dynamic change, is about a butting up of heads, right? That forces you to do something different. Forces is a little bit strong, but asks you to do something different, right? Asks you to integrate. Oppositions are two things going in opposite directions, but like we saw with that Leo and Aquarius axis, right? They're actually on the same page. They're actually on the same topics. They're just coming about them from different angles. And so the challenge is, the goal is to take those two sides and find a way to integrate them, to balance them, right? If you've ever done a balance challenge, you know that it's constantly in motion. It's never going to just reach this point and stagnate, because we have Pluto to come in and disrupt stagnation, right? So anyway, we want to integrate those things. And those signs are going to feel it the most if you've got planets there. Now, let's say you don't have any planets. Well, you still have a house. Whether or not you have planets in Aquarius, you have a house, a place where action is happening that these planets, Pluto, is going to be transforming. So that's going to be the area of your life that's up for transformation. So for example, if you are Aquarius rising, but you have no planets in Aquarius, you still are going to feel a lot of transformation. The first house is about the self, it has to do with the physical body. It has to do with how we navigate the world, what we meet and greet when we step out our front doors. All of that's going to go through huge transformation. Okay. And then, of course, you want to check out your Leo house as well, because it's on the other side. So going back again to, you don't have any planets in Aquarius, but you've got your sun in Leo, right? Then Pluto is going to oppose your sun and ask for radical personal transformation in that way, even though Pluto is in Aquarius and not in Leo. As a bonus, if it's not too much, some of you, depends on your, your different levels of comfort with astrology, but you can also check out where Uranus and Saturn are. Those are the planets that are associated with Aquarius. They rule Aquarius. So you want to look at them in your natal chart to get some clues there. and you're going to want to look at where they are transiting your chart. And you could also look at your 11th house as well if that floats your boat, because that is Aquarius's natural home turf. But that might be too much for some of you. It might be like the whoosies and the what's its and the where's, like, right? So anyhow, that's why you call an astrologer. They will help you with all of those things and sorting those things out, because astrology, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is complex. It's complex, my friends. So stop sharing my screen. Woo! All right. So hopefully you have a better understanding and an idea of Pluto, of Aquarius, Pluto transforming all these Aquarius things, and what this means for you and your own personal chart. So I will do a series on this because there's a lot to talk about. I'll include it in the astrology of 2024, but I'll also do Pluto and Aquarius going through the houses so that you can kind of get a better idea of what's going to be transforming, what area of your life is going to be transforming, and how that relates to you. So I'll do that in a separate video. Thank you so much to all my new subscribers and all the likes and comments. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. I really kind of wish I had joined YouTube earlier. It's not as scary as I thought it would be. So thank you again. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, because I do respond to them. In the meantime, until the next video, mwah, take care.